inhabit, based on the premise that we are happiest when living closest to the natural world, yet increasingly moving into urban districts. Design for Living invites us all to engage in a conversation around this apparent paradox, how we build homes that enable us to live more harmoniously with ourselves, our communities, and the natural habitat. I'd also just quickly like to address the obvious elephant in the room, and that is my lack of qualification to be next to Oliver and Caroline. With a bit of research, you'll find that Oliver is the nation's authority on biophilic design. It's niche, but he is the man. And then Caroline is the director of a well-recognised architecture and interior company in Brighton. I am the son of Alistair. I'm not a designer, I'm not a maker, I've tried both, I'm not very good. I've been allowed to speak a little bit about, as long as I stay on script, basically. So I'm going to do that from now on. But it's a real honour to be in front of so many of you who I am getting to know better, and there's some pretty impressive minds. So thank you for coming. I'd like to start talking about the building. It's a very impressive building, and it's a real honour to be part of its now story. There's been a settlement here since pre-medieval times, which is a very, very long time, on the route between a cattle drive from Winchester to Eastbourne. Detailed records start in about the 1760s, when the clockmaker and politician Thomas Harbden had this building. But the building took on its current form in about the 1800s, when the prominent nonconformist ironmonger, Ebenezer Morris, took this building on, and he used it as a showroom for the Phoenix Ironworks, which is just across the river. Examples of this can be seen throughout the building, these steel posts in here, these vents that I've actually blocked up because they are exposed to the outside, but you can see in the middle. We have a well in the back over there. We have a dipping ceiling and skylights. We have glass prism lighting and spiral staircases, all original details, hundreds of years old, that were made in Lewes. Quite incredible, really. So after Morris, it was then owned by Lipton's, who had it throughout the war, and it was a dry store at the time. It moved on to become Gamley's Pet Shop, and old Louisians will remember coming in here and seeing the walls laced with toys. So for post-war children, this was a really quite exciting space. And my memories of it, and probably most of yours, would be as a pet shop. Yeah. And there were seeds between the floorboards as we opened. I was still hoovering them out, and some animals are still fearful of entering the building. But Alistair used to walk past every day from our old showroom to get lunch, and occasionally wonder, what if? Well, when the opportunity arose to take it on, you did it. And it's sort of testimony to that vision that we are in here, and that it is the building that it is. And being by your side, and being your son and your business partner, it has really been quite an amazing journey to go on. And I've really quite grateful to be a custodian of this building as we move on. To Ollie and Sarah, who with Alistair have designed, redesigned, collaborated, negotiated, fought over every inch of this building in terms of how it should look, trying to coordinate these styles. It's been quite incredible. And then everything that is fixed down was made by our guys in the workshop. And they have a lot of fun, and they work to really high standards. It's quite a beautiful thing to see that. So we're currently in phase 2 of 3. The client consultation space still to be finished, and hopefully the back area will become the rest of the house if we can continue to charge forward. So media walls and living room, bedroom, potentially designs to be confirmed. But what we have is essentially a shaker, the modern, and a fusion in between, trying to combine these styles. Not an easy thing. So most of you know about the business and how we work, totally bespoke in the way that we design, the way that we manufacture, and that we install on site, as John and Sue can testify to, being old customers and new customers. And everything is made in our workshop, but that wasn't always the case. We started in Hadlow Down in 1984, 2 years before I was born, while Alistair and Sue, my parents, lived in South Street, which is just over there, and where I was born. So we haven't come far, that's for sure. Always important to Alistair was using the best materials available and making specifically to each client. The integrity behind that bespoke cabinet making is something that remains absolutely key today and hasn't changed at all. But so from the old fire station behind the church to our old showroom at the end of the road to here, 3 showrooms, 36 years, less than 100 metres. We have in that time also survived the floods. We have moved our workshop into a new facility in 2000, a 5,000 square foot area which is being designed in conjunction with George Baxter, who has really thought about the through flow of timber in and furniture out. It's where we make everything still to this day. Other times during the business's history, 2008 was a difficult time. It was nearly fatal, but due to his prudence, his strength, his courage, savings, we are still here, we are still going, and I think that has really given the team a bit of backbone, a bit of resilience to survive inevitable adversity which comes up. Yes. So what happened shortly after, we took on a business and marketing consultant who dragged us from being Woodworks of Lewis, and we became Alistair Fleming Design. We left behind our core market and grew into a new one. And that has allowed us to really start to experiment with new materials, new resources, new ways of working, new simple innovations that are really creating quite exciting projects. We explore the palette with our clients far earlier than ever before, and we lead them astray, as Susie can testify to. This back area here is just a taste of some of the things that Ollie and Sarah and Alistair have been compiling over the last few years. Whereas 20 years ago we would focus on the product and the manufacture and that journey, nowadays we've really focused on this collaborative design service which we offer, having been rooted in that considered manufacture process. Subsequently, we are designing and producing more daring pieces, and the notion of bespoke is something that we embrace far more than ever before. Lots of people call themselves bespoke, but really it is imagination, it's knowledge of materials, and it's budget. And if the skies are the limits, then anything is possible. So to move on to design in general, the most important element for me is how do we, as the stakeholders, build homes that enable us to live more harmoniously with ourselves, our communities, and the natural habitat. It's easy to dismiss the idea of good design as being luxury until we think of the myriad of ways it affects our lives. Good design can resonate the intention. Is it to provoke awe in statement buildings, public buildings, cathedrals? Is it to provoke fear in brutalist dictator state architecture? It can guide us to new ways of thinking. It can invoke an inner calm. What is architecture and design trying to do? Comfort and familiarity of our environment inevitably happen. Architects play a vital role in designing our urban districts, and they have the impact on our emotions, creating spacious buildings, well-proportioned room. We're all impressed and susceptible to these feelings when we see them. So design is constantly evolving. It's not a static thing. It's keeping the imagination alive, and I think that's something that we really embrace, and I know that people in here do, giving expression to changes in society. But I think we're on the brink of significant change with the technological developments that are now out there and how we can move forward. Information has become far more democratized than ever before. Following conversations with the universities, it becomes more apparent our need to modernize. Students are emerging with fresh ideas, and they can blend that with our expertise, because future collaboration could really start to inject some of these skills into the business. Artificial intelligence able to take care of repetitive tasks, and it's going to change the way potentially that we design. Robots now able to mimic the human hand far more so than ever before. It could be quite scary thoughts, but I think it's changes that we as the design community need to be abreast of. There's a classic quote from Henry Ford, which is that if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. The notion is that the experts know best, and if you always listen to your clients, you will give them what they know. That actually it's our responsibility to be ahead of the game, to understand what technologies are entering the market, and to be responsible and use them in a relevant way, so that we're not just left saddling up horses while everyone else is driving electric cars. And so the cityscapes are changing. We may not need electric cars in years to come.
Might need horses.
Maybe back to horses. The cityscapes are changing how we design, all of the modern necessities focused in one space. And I think we all understand how this could be more environmentally beneficial to us, and we could leave behind some of the rural spaces for nature to regain. Bringing it back to what we know, kitchen in a design perspective, we start with three main elements. The room, the space, the client, what their needs and desires are, and mixing that with our expertise. We invite the clients here to our showroom, have an initial consultation where they bring these elements, and we really try and get under the skin and use intuition to eke out information. We then draw it up in SketchUp. We might present two schemes, that which the client wants, and if there's a divergence, that which we think works best. Following a back and forth, the client will also have their palette in front of them so they can see what sort of materials we're working with and what we're proposing. It will also come with a quote. And if we get the go-ahead, then we bounce this design forward and back until everything is decided, every detail, handle, hinge, etc. It then gets sent to our workshop where, as I mentioned, it's made by hand. Some of these machines, cast iron Wadkins, are second hand 25 years ago, but they're still making things sweetly as ever. We find also the more we make in the workshop, the higher the standards are when we get to site, so that our fitter is more concerned with fitting what we've made to the building rather than adapting anything that has to be made. What we've managed to compile, what we've managed to compile is a team really skilled with some really important talents within it: spatial awareness, aesthetic taste, the ability to listen, technical knowledge of materials, industry links, detail driven, and the confidence to deliver this. Collaborations with architects have led us to do things we would not have done before, blend the kitchen into the building. Interior designers are encouraging us to use finishes and a colour palette that we perhaps also would not have experimented with. So one of the most interesting things is when we, the design team and the client, sit down and start to agree on things, but also what we don't agree on, and why don't we agree on things? Because inevitably, experiences from our lives, potentially from childhood, are influencing what we like and what we don't like. Trying to get under the skin of that without it becoming too blatant is another interesting conversation which we sometimes have. One of the most important design movements in the kitchen industry, the shaker. It's a style that has evolved from a religious movement. In the 1750s, people in Maine, in the USA, had headed out from England to Maine to start new lives. An interesting organisation, and there was, for a few reasons, one of them being equal leadership roles for men and women, equally poignant today because that seems to be where we're going. But what they were known for is simple utilitarian functional principles of design, something which we really hold dear. And the reason why that is still relevant is because people look at it and they refer to it as timeless, which is cliche, but that is essentially what it is. Keeping it simple is what it's all about. This in particular, no plinth, no cornice, no beading, light versus light and dark. It makes for such a simple design, but from there, elaboration for the client's preference can be made. We use these ideals in our designs every day. Every day we learn something new. It's quite an interesting template to move forward to. So one of the key things, and I'm aware that I'm rambling now, but one of the key things to me, one of the most important things, is sustainability. So how do we take what we have done and bring it into the modern world when it is difficult to be green? So many things around us are not designed to allow us to be environmentally conscious. I've mentioned to a few people tonight that throughout my 20s I was an outdoor instructor, making me uniquely unqualified to be a kitchen designer, but with a deep passion and a love of nature. I relish green open spaces and the unexpected realisations that these can offer, culminating in an expedition to Greenland when I really started to see how nature is communicating to itself perpetually. I was beginning, and I have begun, to tune into them, and it's a really special relationship which I personally have with it. Now I realise that I'm very fortunate to have these sorts of experiences, and when I come back to the city and I see it through these lenses, there's so many things that I would like to see change. Migratory corridors through cities where a butterfly could get from Winchester to Eastbourne perhaps. And I think the Green New Deal written by our Caroline Lucas goes a long way to sort of, you know, telling us, showing us how things could be different. It is a challenge being green, and it's easy to get downhearted and overwhelmed by the scale of this. I try and stay positive and optimistic at all times. We are part of a throwaway culture where the recycling systems were not designed in the same way that the stuff we use was. But again, the circular economy is going quite a long way to showing us how we can start to change what we do. One of the most difficult challenges when I'm relating this back to us is how do we repurpose the raw materials that were the product, the building or the furniture that we have made when it reaches the end of its life? I don't know the answer to that yet. I'm hoping we can start to get closer. And lastly, I would really like to just thank Design Brighton and reiterate how proud I am to be a member of that, and how proud I am that our business is a part of this community. It's promoting me and us to think locally but act globally as we move forward. It's with an empowered sense of purpose and a shared vision, which there are few in our area doing more than Sophie to push this forward. So very grateful for the work that she puts in to do this. And I hope tonight will spark some action, some adjustments perhaps to behaviour, and fill the billowing sails of progressive modern design, because they are moving forward and we have to have faith. This can be that touchstone from which we all act forward with, in a way that we can try to serve our communities and the environment better. Thank you very much.